A family dinner, a single text, and a betrayal so calculated it nearly cost Emily her life, but they underestimated who they were trying to break. Emily Carter walked into her parents' house with the kind of ease that comes from habit, not warmth. The suburban home, with its immaculately trimmed hedges and predictable beige siding, had never felt like a sanctuary. It was a stage, and tonight, the script had been handed to her long before she arrived. Her mother's voice floated from the kitchen, light and rehearsed, calling her in as if this dinner were just another episode in a wholesome family sitcom. Emily smiled thinly, stepping into the dining room where her father stood to slowly. Caught between a hug and a handshake, they settled for a nod, the same nod they had exchanged for years. Her sister, Claire, was already seated, her eyes glued to her phone, offering a glance of acknowledgement that barely grazed politeness. The table was set with meticulous care, down to the glass of cranberry juice at Emily's place. She hadn't touched cranberry juice in months, but here it was, as if time had been frozen to preserve the illusion of closeness. Her mother's smile was a performance, one Emily had seen perfected over countless family gatherings. You still like cranberry, right? Her mother escatimally nodded. This wasn't the moment for truth. They ate chicken, potatoes, green beans. The meal was as ordinary as the conversation. Her father's familiar rants about traffic, her mother's obligatory questions about work, Claire's snide remarks about office gossip. Emily played her part, the quiet, reliable one, the sister who didn't stir the pot, until her phone buzzed in her lap. Shut up and leave now. Don't say anything to your parents. No name, no emojis, just cold, clipped sentences. She stared at it, the words sinking like lead. She could hear her father's voice carrying on about potholes and zoning laws, her mother's agreeing hums, Claire's lazy chewing. But in that moment, the ordinary snapped. Emily excused herself with a calmness that belied the storm in her chest, heading upstairs to the bathroom, where the lock worked. She called the number. It rang once. You're still there? Who is this? It's Mark. Mark, Claire's ex-boyfriend. His voice was strained, urgent, as though he was speaking from a closet, hiding from something or someone. You need to leave. Just get up, walk out, don't drink anything. Emily felt her throat constrict. Her gaze flicked to the untouched glass of cranberry juice. Why? I can't explain. Just trust me. Please, Emily. But she needed more. And when she pressed him, Mark's words came out clipped and raw. They want you to pass out. They're going to use your fingerprint to get into your phone. They're after your bank accounts. Emily sat on the cold edge of the bathtub, her body rigid, her mind spinning. The glass of juice, the rehearsed small talk, the too careful smiles. She saw them now for what they were. She had a choice, but deep down, she knew she had already made it. Returned to the table, sat down, picked up the glass, tilted it, let the liquid shimmer in the light. But she didn't drink, not a drop. Instead, she leaned back, feigning a casual glance towards the driveway. Was that someone pulling in? She Esquito. Three of them turned their heads. At that moment, Emily tilted the glass beneath the table, letting the juice seep into the carpet. Not the whole thing, just enough to make them believe. Then, she swayed slightly, hand to her temple. Feel weird, a little dizzy. Her mother was at her side in an instant, voice laced with false concern. You okay, sweetheart? Emily gave a weak nod. Think I just need to lie down. They helped her to the couch, draping a blanket over her legs with a gentleness that felt surgical. She closed her eyes, but every sense was sharp, alive to the movements around her. She heard her father's whisper. Is she asleep? Yeah, she's out, Claire replied. Let's do this quickly. She felt her phone being lifted, her hand manipulated like a lifeless puppet, thumb pressed to the screen. The faint buzz of a successful unlock. Their voices were hushed but clear. Routing number? She has it saved. Just look under banking. Don't take it all, just enough to cover it. What if she notices? She won't. She always blacks out, but the app demanded a two-step verification. Claire's voice grew tense. She changed it. It's asking for a code. Frustration flared. Try another app. Still locked. The plan was unraveling. Emily felt the weight of their betrayal in every click, every sigh. Finally, her mother spoke. "Just put the phone back." They did. The living room settled into an eerie quiet, the tension palpable. Emily slowly stirred, blinking as if emerging from a light nap. "Sorry. Must have zoned out for a sec." They plastered on smiles, but their eyes betrayed them. She stood, gathering her things with steady hands. "Think I'll head home. Long day tomorrow. Of course. Get home safe," her father said. The words felt hollow, rehearsed. They hugged her at the door, a ritual now tainted. As Emily stepped into the cool night, she knew something fundamental had shifted. She didn't confront them, didn't accuse. But before she left that bathroom, she had set her trap. Fingerprint access remained, but her bank security was fortified. Every unauthorized attempt would log itself, trigger alerts, and leave a digital breadcrumb trail. And more importantly, she had recorded everything. Silent, seamless, incriminating. She drove to the police station in silence, the weight of years long manipulation falling away with every Emily sat in the sterile, gray interview room at the police station, her phone lying face up on the metal table as the detective leaned forward, replaying the audio she had recorded. The subtle clicks of her family's betrayal echoed off the walls, every word, every breath, sinking into official documentation. Detective Alvarez, a composed woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper intuition, paused the recording and looked at Emily with a measured gaze. "You're calm for someone reporting her entire family," she said. Emily didn't flinch. "I've had years to rehearse this moment. I just never knew it would be tonight." They went through protocols, statements, and digital traces, but Emily's mind was elsewhere. Mark. His intervention had been abrupt, yet precise, like he had been waiting for the exact moment to act. When Alvarez asked her if she had somewhere safe to stay, Emily hesitated, then thought of Mark's loft downtown. She hadn't seen him in months, not since he and Claire had called it quits. Their breakup had been messy, a collision of Claire's entitlement and Mark's refusal to be Herat. Emily had admired him for Thatch texted Mark, asking if she could crash for the night. His response was immediate. Come no, the drive to Mark's place was a blur of streetlights and unspoken fears. When she arrived, Mark was waiting at the door. His face, usually framed with casual detachment, was carved with concern. "You all right?" Emily nodded. "They tried. They failed." He stepped aside, letting her in. The loft was a stark contrast to her parents' house. Exposed brick, scattered books, and an old guitar resting in the corner. It was real, unpolished, safe. They sat in silence for a while, the hum of the city below filling the spaces where words should have been. "Why did you warn me, Mark? How did you even know?" He exhaled, leaning back against the worn-out couch. "Claire told me things when we were together, about the money you gave, about how your parents always expected you to pick up the slack. It was like they saw you as a resource, not a person. I didn't think much of it back then, but recently," Claire slipped. She mentioned a plan, something about solving her debts. "It didn't sit right. I started watching, listening. Tonight, I was outside your house, heard enough to know they were moving forward." His confession wasn't wrapped in heroics. It was matter-of-fact, protective. Emily felt a knot in her chest loosen. "Thank you," she said softly, smiled faintly. "I couldn't let them do that to you." As the night deepened, their conversation shifted from facts to reflections. Shared stories of Claire's manipulations, Mark's struggle to detach from their toxic orbit, and Emily's long-standing role as the fixer. The emotional current between them simmered, not explosive, but undeniable. There was history, but now, there was Alan meant the following morning. Emily awoke to her phone buzzing with notifications. Her mother's frantic texts, her father's curt voicemails, Claire's voice notes filled with Fox apologies and veiled threats. She muted them all, but a message from Detective Alvarez pierced through a gambit. "Access to your accounts logged. Evidence chain initiated. We're moving forward." By noon, officers were knocking on her parents' front door. the very door she had walked through less than 24 hours ago. Emily watched from her car, parked discreetly across the street, as her family's facade crumbled under the weight of law enforcement's quiet efficiency. They didn't resist. They couldn't. The evidence was airtight. Emily felt a complex swell of emotions as her mother was let out, as her father's stoic mask faltered, as Claire's defiant posture sagged under reality. Mark was beside her, his hand resting gently over hers on the steering wheel. "This is just the beginning," he said. Emily knew he was right. The legal process would be slow, meticulous. But this moment of reckoning was tiresome. The weeks that followed, Emily's life became a series of procedural steps. Depositions, security briefings, endless paperwork. But within that monotony, there was clarity. She started spending more time at Mark's loft. It wasn't intentional at first, but as days turned into nights, his place began to feel less like a refuge and more like home. One evening, as they sat on the rooftop, the city skyline flickering around them, Mark asked a question that caught Emily off guard. "Have you ever thought about leaving? Not just them, this city, the noise, the weight of it all." Emily looked out at the horizon. She had never considered escape because she had been conditioned to endure. But now, the thought of starting fresh, of building a life untethered to the manipulations of her past, felt less like fantasy and more like a plan. "Where would we go?" She asked. Mark's smile was soft but certain. "Anywhere we want." The choice was hers. For the first time, the future felt like hers to write. Weeks following her family's arrest were a storm Emily had to navigate with precision. The legal machinery moved slowly but relentlessly, pulling her into depositions, hearings, and endless strategy meetings with her legal team. Yet through it all, Mark remained her anchor. His loft had become more than a refuge. It was her new normal. They crafted routines: late-night takeout, quiet evenings dissecting case files, shared silences on the rooftop that wove them into a rhythm she hadn't realized she was missing. One evening, Emily received a call from Detective Alvarez. "We need to meet. Something's come up." The urgency in her voice cut through the otherwise peaceful evening. Emily met Alvarez at a small coffee shop downtown, a neutral ground that felt safer than sterile police offices. Alvarez slid a file across the table. "There's more. Your family's attempt wasn't a one-off. We've uncovered a network of similar schemes involving other relatives and acquaintances. Financial manipulation, identity theft, coercion. They had a system, and you were their latest target because you were the most lucrative." Emily's breath caught. It wasn't just about family greed. It was organized exploitation. The file detailed how Claire and her parents had, over the years, entrapped others' extended family, friends, even old colleagues. Mark's exasperation was visible as he flipped through the documents. "They were predators," he muttered, disbelief laced with anger. Alvarez continued, "This expands the case. It's no longer personal fraud. It's a criminal conspiracy on a much larger scale." The investigation pivoted. What was once a singular betrayal now spanned multiple states, involving authorities beyond their small town. Federal agencies took an interest, elevating the stakes. Emily's role shifted from victim to key witness. The spotlight wasn't comfortable, but it was necessary. Despite the growing tension, Emily and Mark found solace in each other. What started as cautious companionship had deepened into something tangible, though unspoken. Mark's presence was no longer an exception in her life. It was the constant tone. Night, as they sifted through paperwork on Mark's kitchen counter, their hands brushed, lingering longer than a casual touch should. Emily met his gaze, a mixture of gratitude and something softer, more vulnerable. "I don't know how I would have made it through this without you," she whispered. "You would have," Mark replied, his hand enveloping hers. "But I'm glad. You didn't have to." The kiss that followed wasn't planned. It wasn't a dramatic climax. It was quiet, certain, like everything that had been building between them finally found its voice. The walls Emily had built for years didn't shatter. They simply softened, allowing warmth to seep in as the case expanded. So did the risks. Emily received subtle warnings, anonymous texts, shadowy figures loitering along near her office, veiled threats about family loyalty. But where fear once paralyzed her, now it fueled her resolve. Each attempt to intimidate her only tightened her alliance with law enforcement and Marconi. Particularly tense afternoon, Alvarez pulled Emily aside. "We've intercepted chatter. They're planning to discredit you, leak fabricated evidence, twist the narrative to make you look like the aggressor." Emily's response was steady. "Then let's get ahead of them." They crafted a counter strategy. Emily agreed to a discreet media interview, presenting her side with clarity and evidence. The interview wasn't about painting herself as a victim but about exposing systemic abuse disguised as familial duty. Her calm, factual recounting of events struck a chord. Public opinion swayed. Support poured in, silencing the smear campaign. Before it gained traction amid the chaos, Emily found herself drawn closer to Mark. Their connection wasn't born out of crisis alone. It was rooted in shared values, mutual respect, and an understanding that transcended their entangled history with Claire. Their relationship, once undefined, has now blossomed with quiet certainty. But the battle wasn't over. As the federal case solidified, Emily discovered a final, devastating truth. Claire had been the architect behind the entire network. Her charm, her manipulation, her strategic alliances. Claire had orchestrated the family's operations with precision. Realization was a gut punch. For years, Emily had believed Claire was simply a pawn, molded by their parents' expectations. Now, she saw the truth. Claire wasn't trapped. She was the trap. When the authorities moved in for the final arrest, Emily watched from a distance. As Claire was led away in cuffs, her defiant smile faltering under the weight of exposed secrets. It was the last time Emily saw her sister. That night, back at the loft, Emily and Mark sat on the rooftop, the city's pulse beneath them. The sky was a canvas of stars, indifferent yet comforting. "Do you regret it?" Mark asked, his arm draped around her. Emily thought for a moment. "No, I regret not seeing it sooner. But regret won't build what comes next." "What comes next?" Emily smiled, leaning into him. "Whatever we choose." Their kiss that night wasn't an escape. It was a promise. They had survived the storm, but now it was time to build. Yet beneath the peace, a quiet question lingered. Had they truly unraveled every thread? Or was there another layer waiting to be exposed? In the weeks that followed Claire's arrest, Emily found herself caught in a whirlwind of shifting dynamics. With the legal process transitioning to the federal level, new faces entered the picture: prosecutors, agents, media correspondents, all pulling Emily in different directions. She had become the linchpin of a case larger than anyone had imagined, but with each new layer uncovered, the shadows around her seemed to deepen. Emily returned to her office, cautiously resuming her work as a security analyst. Yet, normalcy felt like a distant concept. Every time her phone buzzed, a sliver of doubt pierced through her composure. She had built her career on outsmarting digital threats, but this was personal. Now, the adversaries knew her name, her patterns, her weakness. Mark noticed her unease. He became her quiet protector, observing from a distance, yet always near enough to intervene. Their bond had evolved beyond unspoken emotions. They were partners now, bound by survival and the undeniable force of what had grown between them. One rainy evening, Emily received a visit from Detective Alvarez. The detective's face was more tense than usual. "We need to talk," Alvarez said, settling into the chair opposite Emily's desk. "Claire's cooperation came with a price. She's feeding intel to a defense attorney who's known for manipulating cases through public opinion. They're going to shift the narrative." Emily's brow furrowed. "Shift it how?" "They're going to paint you as a co-conspirator. The story will be that you orchestrated a cover-up, made it all look like a setup against you." The audacity of it made Emily's stomach churn. What do they have? Nothing real, but enough fabricated digital footprints to cause doubt. Claire was smart. She's been planting seeds, forging records, They're betting on public doubt to force a plea deal. The realization stung. Claire wasn't fighting the charges. She was trying to drag Emily into the mud. The betrayal wasn't finished, it had just morphed into a new formally knew she couldn't fight this the traditional way. The justice system moved with rules and timelines, but public perception could shift overnight. She needed to stay ahead. Mark, ever the strategist, proposed a bold move. We take control of the narrative. You've stayed silent long enough. It's time they see you, hear you, on your terms. They crafted a digital counter-campaign and unfiltered video, not polished by PR teams or legal advisors. Just Emily, speaking plainly about the truth. They filmed it in Mark's loft, with the city skyline muted in the background in the video. Emily shared not just the facts but the emotional toll, the manipulation, the coerced silence, the years of being the family's fixer. She didn't plead for sympathy. She presented her story as a mirror, challenging viewers to reflect on the blurred lines of loyalty and abuse. The video spread faster than expected. Within days, it was trending, picked up by media outlets, and dissected by commentators. Public sentiment began shifting once more, and Claire's fabricated narratives crumbled under the weight of Emily's transparency, but victory came at a cost. Emily started receiving veiled threats. Her car tires were slashed. Cryptic messages appeared in her email, suggesting she should retract her statements. Mark tightened their security measures, installing surveillance, encrypting communications, and ensuring no loophole was left unattended. The storm reached its peak when a break-in occurred at Emily's apartment. Nothing was stolen, but it was clear the intruders had a purpose: intimidation. The incident forced Emily and Mark into a decision they had been avoiding. We need to disappear for a while, Mark said, packing essentials into a duffel bag. Go somewhere off-grid until the trial concludes. Reluctantly, Emily agreed. They retreated to a remote cabin owned by one of Mark's trusted friends, hidden in the thick woods several hours away. Isolation brought a fragile peace, giving them space to breathe, to process. In those quiet nights, under the soft hum of crickets and rustling leaves, their relationship deepened. Away from the city's noise and the case's suffocating grip, they found fragments of normalcy. They cooked meals together, read by the fireplace, shared stories untethered from the chaos that had engulfed their lives. Even amidst the serenity, Emily's mind remained sharp. She worked tirelessly with Alvarez and federal agents, piecing together Claire's digital manipulations. Every fabricated trail, every falsified document, they traced them back to their source, dismantling the illusion Claire had spun. The trial date approached, and the tension grew palpable. The prosecution, now armed with irrefutable evidence of Claire's machinations, prepared for a showdown. Alvarez briefed Emily before the trial, assuring her that their case was airtight. In the morning of the trial, Emily stood before the courthouse, Mark by her side. The building loomed, a symbol of the reckoning that awaited. Reporters clamored. Cameras flashed, but Emily's gaze remained steady inside the courtroom. Claire sat at the defense table, her expression a mask of defiance. The proceedings began, and the courtroom transformed into a battlefield of testimonies, cross-examinations, and strategic gambits. When Emily took the stand, the atmosphere shifted. She recounted her story with poise, her voice unwavering. The evidence she presented, coupled with the prosecution's meticulous breakdown of Claire's forgery network, left little room for doubt. The defense's attempts to discredit her fell flat. Every manipulated document was dismantled, every accusation countered with precision. Claire's smirk faded as the weight of her unraveling empire became evident. The verdict came swiftly. Guilty on multiple counts: fraud, conspiracy, digital forgery, and coercion. Claire's sentence was substantial, ensuring she wouldn't manipulate another life for a very long time. After the trial, as they stood on the courthouse steps, Alvarez approached Emily. You did it, Emily nodded, a mixture of relief and exhaustion washing over her. We did it. Mark took her hand, squeezing it gently. It's over. But Emily knew better. The scars would remain. Trust, once fractured, wouldn't mend overnight. Yet, in Mark's presence, she found the foundation to rebuild upon. That evening, back in the loft, they sat in silence, watching the city lights blink against the night sky. What now? Emily asked, her head resting on Mark's shoulder. Mark smiled, pressing a kiss to her temple. Now, we live. No more looking over your shoulder. No more shadows. Emily closed her eyes, allowing herself, for the first time in years, to truly exhale. Yet, even as peace settled over them, a quiet awareness remained. They had won this battle, but life was unpredictable. The question that had lingered still whispered beneath the surface. In the quiet weeks after the trial, Emily felt the weight of the aftermath settle into her bones. The world outside seemed to move on quickly, but inside her, the storm still churned. She had spent years being the family fixer, the silent support, the one who absorbed the damage so others could remain unscathed. Now that the chaos had subsided, she faced a new kind of challenge. Learning how to live without the burden. Mark had been her constant through it all. Their bond, once formed in crisis, had deepened into something unshakable. Yet, even he could sense the tension lingering beneath her calm surface. One evening, as they sat on the rooftop, he finally asked, "Do you feel safe now?" Emily considered the question carefully. Safety wasn't just about locks and alarms. It was about trust, about believing that the ground beneath you wouldn't give way. "I feel safer with you," she said, "but I don't think I'll ever feel safe in the way I used to." Mark didn't press further. He simply pulled her closer, their silence saying more than words ever could. But beneath the peace they had carved out, an unease persisted. Emily's instincts, honed by years of navigating hidden threats, whispered that not every danger had been extinguished. Her suspicions were confirmed when Alvarez reached out unexpectedly. "We need to meet privately." They met in a nondescript diner on the outskirts of the city. Alvarez's expression was tighter than usual, her tone clipped. "Claire's sentencing closed one chapter, but something doesn't sit right. The break-in at your apartment, it wasn't just about intimidation. We believe they were after something specific." Emily's pulse quickened. "What?" "Your work files. There's evidence suggesting they were trying to access proprietary security algorithms from your projects. This wasn't just family greed. Someone higher up saw an opportunity." It was a twist Emily hadn't anticipated. The betrayal had always felt deeply personal, but now it seemed that Claire had been a pawn in a much larger game. Corporate espionage, data theft. The stakes had been higher than Emily had ever imagined. "Who's behind it?" she asked. Her voice, steady despite the rising dread. "We're tracing it, but it points to an international firm known for aggressive data acquisition. They used your family's desperation to gain inside access." The revelation hit like a punch. All the personal manipulation, the emotional blackmail, it had been exploited by outsiders for corporate gain. Claire had been willing, but she wasn't the architect. Emily had been a target not just because of family ties but because of her professional value. Determined not to be a victim again, Emily worked with Alvarez and a cybersecurity task force. She turned her expertise against those who had sought to exploit her, tracing digital footprints, uncovering hidden networks, and building a case airtight enough to withstand even the most aggressive legal defenses. The deeper they dug, the clearer the picture became. The firm had orchestrated similar operations across different sectors, using personal relationships to breach security perimeters. Emily's case wasn't isolated. It was a template. As the investigation widened, Emily became the linchpin once more, not as a victim, but as a strategist. Her insights into the firm's tactics became invaluable. She advised the task force, ensuring that no overlooked detail would allow them to slip through the cracks. Through the process, Mark remained unwavering support. Their relationship, tested by crisis after crisis, evolved into something profound. They weren't just partners in defense, they were building a life together, one rooted in trust and mutual respect. The climax came when federal authorities, armed with the intelligence Emily had helped compile, executed a series of coordinated raids. The firm's executives were arrested, their operations dismantled. The victory wasn't just legal, it was personal. Emily had turned her greatest betrayal into a catalyst for justice on a larger scale. In the aftermath, as the dust settled and headlines shifted, Emily and Mark stood once more on their rooftop sanctuary. The city stretched out beneath them, vast and indifferent, yet filled with possibilities. "It's really over this time," Mark said, his voice laced with quiet. Emily smiled, feeling the truth of his words resonate within her. "It's over, and now, it's our turn." Their future, once shadowed by manipulation and fear, was now a blank canvas. Emily, no longer shackled by familial guilt or external threats, was free to define her path. With Mark by her side, she knew it would be a journey built on strength, integrity, and hard-earned peace. Yet, as they stood together, a subtle tension lingered, not from fear, but from awareness. The world was unpredictable, but this time, Emily wasn't waiting to be blindsided. She was ready, vigilant, and unafraid. The story wasn't about the betrayal anymore. It was about what came after, reclaiming her life, her choices, her identity. As the city lights flickered beneath the night sky, Emily whispered, "Let's begin." Mark smiled. Together,